We have several heads in terms of the deltoid. Okay, and several kind of components and compartments. I'm not going to get into them all, but one thing you want to keep in mind is that the part coming from the clavicular portion is going to kind of terminate a little bit before the rest. The acromial portion comprises a lot, one big teardrop down here and then another part there. And then the part coming from the scapula is going to be its own beast, which terminates again a little bit above the insertion of the deltoid. Keeping in mind that the insertion of the deltoid, along the grand scheme of things, is almost halfway down the humerus. Quite a good bit of distance, right? And very deceiving. But if you keep in mind these separate chunks, you can keep the deltoid from looking too bulky. Refine that spine of the scapula. Alright, and just get that hooked in a little bit. Not a major deal. But hopefully you can see the two separate sections. Okay, and I'm going to just emphasize them a touch. Alright. Sternal portion. Careful, don't give him man boobs. You definitely want some heft down here, but you don't want a sphere. You don't want a man boob. It's not good. It's not good for his self-esteem. It's not good for your self-esteem. You posted at ZBrush Central, and everybody's like, dude's got man boobs, and then you start wondering, they say we all sculpt who we are. We all sculpt ourselves, and then you start thinking, do I have man boobs? And it just goes downhill. So you got to be careful. No man boobs. But do give him an armpit, because we pull all kinds of stuff out of that armpit. In a positive way, if that makes sense. Okay, I'm making that lat a little bit more obvious. My strokes are having to, I'm having to dig deeper and longer because my depth in bed is on the shallow side, but that's a positive thing in the long run. Alright, and let's just round the side of that rib cage a little bit. Sometimes when you're sculpting, you lose the convexity and it starts to become concave, and that's a problem. There's very few concavities, or if there's any concavities in the body, they're coming in proportion or in relationship to convexities. By that I mean you don't have a lot of surfaces that are just, digging in like this. You do have two different surfaces, two convexities that are meeting somewhere and creating a valley. But you want them to always be pushing out. Really key to making it look healthy. So that's why here in this case, I didn't let that stay kind of pushed in. I wanted it to kind of come out within the constraints and as it's being, approached by other things. Okay. Trapezius meeting up with the end of the scapula. Rector spinea. Okay, it's a male. He's got some muscles developed, so you need to make sure that you have some space in there for his spine to kind of be a valley. If he was thinner, then that would be areas of the body that would protrude out. Okay, we're separating out the medial and lateral form of the erector spinea. And then that's also coming in and connecting with the trapezius. Trapezius, same thing. Spine of the scapula coming up to C7. Okay. From C7, I like to draw a line down to the spine of the scapula, and that changes the flow. So the trapezius is flowing downwards below this. Above it, it's flowing really kind of more along this clavicle and then up. See, I'm sculpting the roundness. You'll see there's a couple of really interesting things that if you study this stuff, you'll see it, but sometimes I'll make a stroke for a form. Sometimes I will actually round that form. There's some variety to how you do that. See me starting to suggest the ribs. Okay. And let's bring in a photo that I think will be really important for a lot of the reference that we're doing. I think I've already loaded it. Yeah, here it is. So I'm going to put that in Spotlight. But you got to be careful with Spotlight. I'm going to press Shift Z. All of these are quite large, so I'm going to start deleting. Let's delete. Well, let's just risk one more. You may want to size things like this down when you're working. Turn Z off so I get the controller out of the way, and then I'm working from this angle. Okay. I'm really working from my knowledge more right now, and as you develop your knowledge, you'll be working more from your knowledge. You want to be working from your knowledge. You do not want to be a slave to what's in front of you, because then When it's no longer in front of you, you're totally screwed. Okay, external oblique. His external obliques were quite developed. Notice that that external oblique is basically a cut-off portion of a cylinder. It's basically a cut-off portion of a cylinder. So keep that in mind. It's a nice way to conceptualize it, I think. And let's cut over the ilium a little, and then the ilium's going to get a little more exposed back here, coming into the sacrum. Don't be afraid to get some depth in there, to get depth everywhere in your model. Gluteus medius. Let's do it from this side, this angle, so you can kind of see where I'm hitting. See that hit and then down? You can see that same hit and then down in the reference. Okay, see the planes? All of that moving into that great trochanter. Really push in that area. A lot of depth. You have to have a lot of depth there at the end of the day to get this part of the body right, because that'll allow you to pull the sartorius out of it, create the little triangle. You know, the sartorius coming out of one side, tensor fasciae latae coming out of the other, the rectus femoris heading straight down to the knee out of the other. And then this little blank triangle. Okay, let's make sure we're in the right territory. Anterior superior iliac spine is there. The inferior anterior inferior iliac spine is there. Superior, inferior. Man, pubic symphysis Okay, the rectus femoris is coming off of that. That's where its insertion is. Its origin, sorry. So the tensor fasciae latae really actually needs to creep a little bit more over to the front. And I need to move the rectus femoris a little bit. A little bit over. This is a mistake people often make, because this tensor fasciae latae is not something you're used to thinking about. It's in fact actually quite strange. Let's see, how do we want to do this? Yeah, we'll just group that as one. That rectus femoris is going to be a little straighter, and then I want to give that tensor fasciae latae a hit out a little bit. Really bulky people, you see it. It's actually quite amazing. And it does require me to, I got to fill this stuff in. Okay. Just rounding that rectus vastus lateralis. Okay, getting this tensor fasciae latae and all that volume. Okay, the gluteus maximus. Getting its insertions, its volume broken up a little bit. Standard brush. And then trim dynamic just to fix up some of that. Okay, that'll all get adjusted a little bit more later on. Damien standard brush. Why not? This form I'm just creating right here is actually something you can see in Gottfried Bam's anatomy books. It's pretty cool. Alright. How are we doing? Okay. You ever see egg tempera paintings where they build form up with these strokes? It's kind of what we're doing. Building form up with these strokes. Okay, now we're building it up in 360 degrees, so we're going to need to keep coming in and checking and making sure we didn't lose anything, which I'm sure we have. So what I'm doing right now is just getting that wall and the external obliques roughly within one contiguous plane. Roughly. Okay. It's a lot of work involved in this approach. A lot. And let's come in and draw, turn ELV to 0. It's a lot of work, and a lot of times you're just off and it doesn't look right and something's wrong. Um, it takes perseverance and a willingness to be wrong. It takes just patience. As I go in, as you go in, and as we try to find all of these hills and valleys that are the human body, right? It's it's just a lot of work. But this is really fun. And if you're approaching it like we're doing right now, then it's a massive learning experience because you're just focusing on these hills and valleys and trying to make this look right. I find it, really rewarding, even if at some points it looks wrong. But I highly recommend you do not let those moments when it looks wrong uh, even remotely enter into your assessment of whether you're doing a good job or a bad job. It should just be something that you got to fix, next thing you got to fix, and that is it. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay. We've been at this probably 40 minutes on that torso, just that front part, trying to figure that out. I already know I'm not happy with what I did here with the medial form. So I'm gonna make that flow a little bit better. And make sure that the lat has a little bit more of its own volume and its own opinion there. But that's what this is all about. And since we're not working from a model, but we're working from photo reference, it does make certain things difficult. However, what I'm hoping is that you're getting the elements that you need to be mindful of. So for example, this part of the erector spinea, we're trying to keep that nice and clean and pretty much straight up and down. Okay, and then there's other parts that are flowing along the ribs, and that part's not straight up and down. That part is a different beast, so going in a slightly different direction. But slowly, methodically, we will get it.